Da-da-da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes. Get those notifications out. Let people know I've gone live. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And I'm a little bit rat woman tonight because in actuality, I dozed off at my desk. Not in watching boring content, but in playing with my rocks. If you don't know, I love rocks. I love crystals. And I have my magnifying glass here. I'll just show you one of my crystals here. I actually dug this one up out of a pit in Thunder Bay, Ontario. If you don't know, I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba. But I love Ontario. It's so beautiful. And one of those reasons I love it so much is because of the crystals. I have a little bit of smoky quartz here. And, these are pieces that I've dug out myself. And, I have hundreds of rocks, hundreds of crystals. I actually have bags that I actually have to return to Lake Superior because you're not supposed to take the rocks home. But, I couldn't help myself. In actuality, I really didn't know the laws in that. And, I have a lot of rocks. I really don't need any more. My past couple of years of my rock hounding trips, I really have been a little bit picky in what I bring home. And yeah, but what I do bring home, I love. I even throw them in the bathtub and I'll bath with them. I really believe in the energy, the telluric energy. This is Mother Nature. This is the energy that comes from the ground. When you hear people say that, oh, you should walk in your bare feet on the ground, that you should ground yourself. This is the reason why. It's because there is actual energy coming from the ground, from the trees, from everything. There's energy in absolutely everything, and I just love this kind of energy. I really, really do. Actually, this one here is my favorite piece. If you've never hung out before, this is my dragon stone. This is a big honking piece of amethyst. Can I get up really close to the camera there? It doesn't give the color justice at all. But when you look behind the rock, see, there's my dragon. And when you look behind the rock, look at its tail. It's hard for me because it's mirrored here. Uh, it's got a tail. This is my favorite rock. And I was thinking I would like to polish this, but I polish it with my palms. This is my desk rock. This rock stays with me. I actually take this rock with me when I go on my trips. And it's going to take my whole life to get this smooth, to get this polish. It might even take, I suspect that this stone will go to my great niece, Charlotte, because she takes after her Auntie Cindy. She takes after her mom too, but her Auntie Cindy is doing the movement. Her mom is being a good mom. She is the example of that kind of move away from an old way of living. And it's not the way she lived, but possibly the way her mother lived, how her mother being my sister, and how our mother lived, and going back generations and generations. And each generation, I do believe, because, we would be waking up to some of these ideas, are getting better and better. This is our evolution. And, we're in the midst of it. We're not at the beginning of evolution, but we're neither now at that end of evolution. We still have a long time to go. thousands of years, hundreds of thousand years before we can get to where we're supposed to be. But I think, in this lifetime that I'm so grateful to have been born in, so grateful that I had that curious mind and that munch for understanding, and that munch to find out where I got it wrong, or where I thought I got it wrong. It isn't an accumulation of ideas, accumulation of actions. It's accumulations of traditions and culture and religious ideas and political ideas. And we hand these down to our kids, and our kids hand these things down to their kids. You know, it's how my family became so dynamic, and that dynamic is actually the source of our problems. And that's the way for all families. We all have handicaps, we all have things that are a little bit kinked on us. And that is a truth. And some of them are physical, some of them are mental, some of them are emotional, right? But the mental and the emotional, quite often, is easy for us to disguise. Up until recently, that physicality has not been able to be manipulated in that same way, to be disguised in that same way. But in innovation, which is a good thing, we have grown in a way that we have more of a say in how we look, right? The plastic surgeries, those innovations in some of those diseases and the cures for some of those diseases that afflict us, and make it so that our life expectancy has extended in that. And maybe, not perfectly in the moment, but we are doing so much better. Even if you just go back 100 years, so many people are living today because of the innovation, even of something like penicillin, which was a discovery, I do believe, in like the 40s or 50s. And even now, there is innovation in finding better ways to inject that insulin, like with patches. And actually, in diabetes, I had an operation, and it's called a gastric bypass. I had it to lose weight. I had this surgery probably, oh, it's been 30 years now. It's been a very, very long time. I think it was like 1987. It changed my life physically, okay? Right? Physically, but emotionally, right? It didn't correct any of the problems. And I found over a decade or two that I was putting on that weight again, in that adapt and conquer. And even though you can't eat as much, you find ways to get the goodies in. You get those high calorie chocolates, right? You know, and you can load up a small belly like that. And after a while, that belly can expand in that. But in that moment of realizing that, physically I was no longer that 311-pound person, I never really got back to that. As I am now, I might have gotten maybe another 20 pounds heavier than what I am now. Uh, just in this past week, I've lost 10 pounds. My taste buds are changing so much. You know, a trait that my mother had, she couldn't tolerate dairy very well, right? We all love ice cream in my family, but it wasn't really good for us kids. And that was an aspect of my mother's, because I remembered how much she really detested milk. I never saw her drink a glass of milk or put milk on her cereal. But when it came to the treats, oh yeah, she would just, right? She loved the dairy that way. But I find now in my maturity that I have that same intolerance. And this past week, I went off the coffee last week, and then this week I bought a tin of coffee, and I can't even manage more than a sip or two of the coffee with the cream in it. So I think what I'm going to do is possibly go back to the what do you call it? The coffee mate, right? The creamer, artificial creamer, and see if that helps me, because I do love my coffee, but coffee without cream is just not the same, and I don't think I'm ready yet to give up coffee. Cream, I could give that up if I could find a different substitute. And in this day of innovation, we concoct all kinds of different things, like the sugar twins. I've been on artificial sweeteners since I was a little kid. It's a aspect of myself that I still have not been able to overcome. And it's a little bit of this, and it's also a little bit of that vision when I do feel and see that I am gaining weight. And it's a signal for me to say that, there is still work to be done there, that I still feel that reliance and that need to be on the artificial sweeteners. When I was growing up as a kid, you know, there were fears about the sweeteners, and people used to say all the time that it turns into formaldehyde in your body when you ingest it, and that you're actually giving yourself a poor post mortem, right? You're what are you doing? You're when you get an autopsy and then you're getting prepared, embalming. When you go for an embalming, that's what the formaldehyde does to you. It preserves your body, right? I don't know why anybody would want to preserve their body. Actually, today I was interrupted in one of my videos, like I always am, with a advertisement, with the sponsor advertisement, and one of them was an organic coffin that is meant to decompose and grow mushrooms. And not only does the coffin decompose, but our bodies decompose. And I thought, oh, what a beautiful idea. But I don't think something like that would be really allowed into say a cemetery, into being buried in a cemetery. And I don't know what the laws are about, burying your loved ones out in the forest on your own. I'm sure there are laws concerning that. But I thought, what a great idea. If I had the opportunity, I might do that for myself. But innovation, you know, things are changing all the time. And like I said, there are so many discoveries going on that make it so that we can extend our life, and we can, right, cover up the real us. I've done it myself with that gastric bypass. Like I said, I actually lost 160 pounds. It only took me 8 months. But not only did I have that gastric bypass, after I had lost all that weight, thinking that everything was going to go back to normal, which it didn't, because of innovation, we have these cosmetic procedures that make these corrections for us. And I delved into that a little bit, and it served me very, very well, to the point where I was able to meet the love of my life, which was my husband, through my no fault of my husband. And I'm going to say that now our relationship failed in that because that was a disguise. I had lost that weight, and even though physically I was a skinny person, mentally and emotionally, I was still 300 pounds. I still had those insecurities in myself, and I brought that into my marriage, right? So when you look at innovation, it's not there to cover up problems, it's there to resolve issues. If I had it all over to do again, right? Hopefully, I would be curious enough and munching on information uh, vigorously and trying to resolve, like I have done in the past half a dozen years, you know, to resolve some of these mindsets that I had, some of these limiting beliefs that I had, and I think I would have done a much better job at, right, not only being that good wife, that secure and emotionally stable wife for my husband, but also at the same time being that person for myself, not having that disguise, right? I was like a doll and just dressing it up, Now I'm just naturally losing a little bit of weight again. Um, Grateful that it's happening, but again, it's my mindset, right? It's that positive mindset. It's in letting go of some of those emotional issues that I have been able to resolve and possibly be that evidence, right, for my sisters. Oh, that would be wonderful, right? Because we were all messed up. We would come from a dynamic family and we all ate to calm our nerves. We all did, and we all have struggled in the ups and downs of our weight. And again, clear signal, it's the evidence, it's the visual to say that there is underlining issues there, right? Some of our handicaps are visible, some of them are not. But when you use the innovation, right, to physically resolve, it doesn't mean that we emotionally or mentally resolve. It's like the people who take like Ozempic and stuff and they lose that weight really fast. Then they find these tendencies that they have to stay on these things that haven't been properly tested yet, because the people who are taking them now are the ones that are the first to step into it, right? They are the experiences in that. I'm just going to take a moment here and I'm just going to stop, send some good cheer out to the fire engine and the paramedics that they get to their destination and it's a false alarm. I live behind a fire station. False alarm, and they get right back there. I see you, Eugene. Oh my goodness. Hello. How are you doing tonight, everybody? I am doing good tonight. Thank you, Eugene. It's not a dress. You keep wanting me to see me in the dresses. It is a blouse. The weather has become a little bit more milder, so I can come out of the tank tops. But as soon as it gets hot again, I'll be right back in those tank tops. And I suspect tonight that I'll be wearing my winter socks in bed because the air conditioner is still not going to go off. It's not going off until probably the end of September, right? We stay pretty warm here, right? Indian summers are pretty common. I don't know if they call them that, right? anymore that isn't truly politically correct. It's actually maybe a little bit disrespectful. I'll maybe keep that in mind so that tomorrow I can maybe do some Googling and see what that alternate pronunciation would be in reference to these beautiful falls that we have that are still hot like summer. I remember one day, or one year that we actually on what was it? Thanksgiving. Oh my goodness. Thanksgiving. And here in Canada, Thanksgiving is in October. I went to the beach and went swimming. And yes, living in Manitoba, we have beaches. It's only because we have a couple of Great Lakes. We have Winnipeg Lake and Manitoba Lake, and they are huge. They are so huge that they look like oceans themselves, right? Even the waves are super, super high quite often. We don't have surfers here, but when I say high waves for Manitoba. Okay, you guys. I dozed off, so my brain is not quite right, refreshed and ready for the day. It's ready for bed. But what we're going to do is we're just going to go into our 54 powerful words. They're just powerful words. We're just going to spend a couple of minutes in the word and call it a day. Call it a productive day, right? I stayed home today. I usually go for a walk every day, but it was raining today. And I was delving into, right, that curious mind, that little bit of munching that I love to do in some heavy, heavy subjects. I'm feeling my way around just like everybody else is in this world. But I am grateful that I am inclined to search out answers, that I am inclined to, I don't know, experience life through the, what do you call that? When you vicariously, this is vicariously live my life through characters, right? And I'm calling them characters only because I don't know them personally. You don't know me personally, and if I hadn't told you, you wouldn't have known that I was 311 pounds at one time. You wouldn't have known that I had had a gastric bypass. You wouldn't have known that I had done the plastic surgery. You wouldn't have known that I had done that and changed the person that I was, because I did change in that. I did change in that. But in some ways I didn't change, right? And we have to remember we have to fix the inside before we fix the outside, because those issues and those problems that got us to that point where we're not happy with the outside, they're not being resolved. They're not being taken care of. And it'll make it so that, right? It was that food, those, right? Those treats that was my coping mechanism. And I didn't lose that trait. I lost the weight. But in my disguise and my inability to gain all that weight back, right? I learned to have that mass too. And it was something I think that probably contributed to the end of my marriage, because it became hard for me to keep up with the persona, right? Because being somebody that always lived vicariously through others, right? I learned through others. I learned through my friends' failed relationships. I learned from those experiences that I had, being somebody who was maybe unacceptable, if not to the world, then into my own self. I felt that way. And you know what? We carry these things on, and it doesn't matter how much innovation, right, comes in. If we don't fix the inside first, nothing that we fix on the outside is going to do us well. What came into my mind right now is a gentleman. Oh my goodness, I'm not remembering his name in this second. I'm not uh, an avid fan of his. Like in saying that, I'm saying I don't follow his content, but he was an ex Navy SEAL, and he was a very, very big man. He was a very big man. And he set his mindset to lose that weight, but he did it himself. He didn't look for surgeries, he didn't look for somebody else to resolve the problem for him. He did it genuinely, he did it himself. And he actually became a thought leader. Oh my Goggins. I got the last name. I got the last name. It just came to my mind there. But yeah, he did it genuinely, and he helped himself. He was able to manage to keep that weight off and to actually make some really amazing movement for himself, and not only for himself but for the people who are following this journey. And, if I had it all over again, you know, I think I might not even have gotten to the point where I needed that surgery because, I'm not going to say in that time because, right, like I said, I gained quite a bit of that weight back. I think almost 50 pounds of that, of the 160, I gained that back, and been up and down numerous times in the few few decades, right? But in the past 10 years, being able to better manage myself, right? And that doesn't sound good, right? I'm not somebody who doesn't like to be managed, but sometimes we have to accept where we're weak in, where we don't have the answers, that we gotta trust somebody else. And, David Goggins has got his first name too. David Goggins is one of those people that can actually be the evidence for people to do it genuinely. And you look at him and go, oh my goodness, he's a machine, right? Right? That's somebody you don't want to mess with. That's aggression. That is alpha. But in actuality, right? It doesn't matter because that's genuine. And for me, when I lost that weight, it was in all that vicariously living through the people that I admired and my friends and the people I thought that had their lives all tidied and wrapped with a bow, which was not the case. Because remember, everybody is handicapped. Everybody is. Some are physical, some are mental, some are emotional. But like I said, quite often the mental and the emotional can be hidden, can be tossed into the background somewheres, right? And in me losing all that weight and not resolving my emotional issues, right? I became ungenuine in that. I became an ungenuine person. So, you know, I take responsibility, quite a bit of it, because, when my husband asked me to marry him, right? I was somebody I wasn't naturally, the person I wasn't. I was the person he wanted to be, right? Now think, how many marriages last these days? They really don't. They say it's over 50% is the divorce rate. It's probably much higher now. I was looking at an old article just yesterday about it, but it was old and they said 50%. But the thing is, that marriage, after a while, like in all marriages, we get comfortable. And when we get comfortable, we slowly let the real selves out, right? And, as that weight slowly came on to me again, that that old Cindy emotionally and physically came right back to, and I kept beating on myself and in my lack of confidence in the way I looked and the way I felt. That was a major contributor because, like I said, when my husband asked me to marry him, he had expectations of who I was, right? It's like when you marry somebody or you move in with somebody, and, for the first couple of months, everything is going absolutely amazing, right? And then there's hair in the sink and toothpaste on the taps. There's underwear and dirty laundry all over the place, sinks full of dishes, grass is not mowed. And again, in saying that, I'm not taking all the blame for that because I had expectations of my own husband too, right? And he was cute. He was sexy. But he couldn't even remember garbage day 4. And our house would have loaded with garbage if he didn't remember to meet the garbage man, right? That once a week. That was his only chore, right? Because again, I was living vicariously. I was being the person that he wanted me to be. And, it was impossible for me to meet up to the standards of a perfect wife, though I tried to, right? Though I tried to. Okay, you guys, innovation, you know, it's amazing. And this is neither the beginning or the end, but this is where we can truly understand that we have an opportunity in this age of AI learning to resource and not just live vicariously through other people, right? But live vicariously through some of these amazing people who got it down packed, who resolved some of the issues, and whether it was, you know, a cure for cancer, or a cure for diabetes, or a prosthesis, or cosmetic surgery, that we're able to keep up with these amazing gifts that they're gifts, right? They are gifts that we have to take care of the inside so that we can meet the outside on an even plane. So, in saying that, we are not in the beginning, but we are in a stage now where we have the options and we have the ability to better serve ourselves and better serve other people. And what I'm doing right now, that's to serve my family, but also at the same time, right? Being a second hander, right? There's a second purpose for everything. And I show up here in sharing not just what I got right, but what I got wrong, right? And I suspect, right, that for my entire life, I will be course correcting in those little guises, right, that I myself have. But learning that, even coming in here and, right, being brave enough to discuss some of these private matters, because they are private, but if you keep them private, how can anybody learn from our experience, right? If David Goggins never became a thought leader and shared in those interviews and in his own experience, how would hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people be inspired by what he did and give a shot to what he did? Because When he serves his lessons, right? He's not just serving the physicality of what he does. He's serving this too. And so if we want to live vicariously through other people, well, this age of AI learning is offering up an entirely different group. And it's not a different group. They have always been around, but this digital age has offered up a source where we have better access and better opportunity to come across the answers that we all need, whether physically, mentally, or emotionally. And that's a truth. There are so many people out there. I am so grateful that I stumbled onto some of the content creators that I did. It offered up a appetizer platter for myself to pick and choose who I wanted to learn from. And lots of times we don't get to choose, right? Who we get to learn from because we are brought up in that influence. We are brought up in those traditions, again, cultures, religious ideas, political ideas. And by the time we become an adult, we just become replicas of what? What brought us up, right? And that is the epigenetics. That is the passing down from one generation to the next. And my hopes is that I could be the evidence for my sisters and my nieces and my great nieces, right? And for my great niece, Charlotte, right? That when I'm done, right, living this miraculous life that I've come to savor like it's a tasty dish, that it's my chunk of chocolate, that I am so grateful that in this age of AI learning that I have been able to come across some people who have truly helped me to get my poop together. If you want to put it like that, because that's the truth. And it's only going to get better and easier because now we're all this close. No matter where we are in the world, we're this close to anybody and everything if we choose to be, right? And so we have a better opportunity to influence that which has not resolved that possibly we have resolved ourselves. All right. I've done a lot of resolving. I have stepped forward in a way that I never thought I would. It wasn't even a thought, a consideration, right? Never thought that, right? I'd be sitting here right now, right? Being able to touch somebody who's possibly on the other side of the world, or somebody who had the same struggles as I, or is considering to have that procedure. They don't do the procedure I had anymore. It's not um, uh, a healthy way to go about it. They found easier ways that cause less damage, like the rubber bands that they tie around the gut, and then you can just release them after you've lost your weight. But you know what? You release that rubber band before you resolved a little bit of this and a little bit of this, right? You're just going to go back to the state that you were in, right? I have people I know that have done that procedure. I had the gastric bypass. It makes it impossible, right? Those staples are not coming. They call it stomach stapling. Those staples are not coming off, right? I don't set off the scanners at the airport. I thought I would the first couple of times taking planes after my operation, but I never did. I never did set the alarms in that. But okay, you guys, this is my night. Like I said, kind of dozed off at the desk, waiting to go live. And I was just playing just playing with my rocks here, right? I love the crystals. I love the telluric energy that is emitted from it. And even if I don't see the energy emit, I feel it 100%. And it is a contribution into my little bit of movement, my little bit of fitting in to my own life, right? Because I'm creating the best life that I possibly can, right? And each one of us has that opportunity to do that. And whether it means changing physically, emotionally, mentally, right? If you make a choice and move towards it, right, it can't help but change in a good way. Not necessarily, right? We have to learn to be genuine in that. We need to learn to resolve some of those hiccups and some of those kinks in our lives, right? Before we go off, right? It's like if you're afraid of heights, you're not going to go climb Mount Everest, are you? Right? But if you resolve some of those inner issues, some of those limiting beliefs, that in baby steps you can maybe practice with the sled hill across the street, that eventually maybe you could climb a mountain. Maybe you could climb Mount Everest. Every person that climbed Mount Everest started somewhere. They just didn't start with Mount Everest, right? And that's the truth. That's the truth. Okay, you guys, let's just pick a card here, couple of just a couple of minutes. And thank you, Eugene, for popping in tonight. I really appreciate that. For those of you who are just starting your day or getting up and getting your kids ready for their day, I hope it's amazing. I hope it runs smoothly and with the least amount of kinks into it. Uh, and that we can generate some good movement for ourselves. And if we choose to make some change in ourselves physically, right? Remember to work a little bit on the inside, right? Before you tackle the outside. Make sure that, right, if you're going to resolve something on the outside, that it actually isn't going to, what do you call that? Back up on you a little bit, like it did with me, right? So grateful for the lessons that come across my path, but it's only because there are great lessons, right? And they're only this far away. They're only that far away. And what amazing time for me to wake up to some of these understandings. I'm a true believer that it was a gift for me. Oh my goodness. Okay, you guys. One card. And if you've never hung out with me before, these are just 54 powerful words, right? Sometimes they connect with my day. Sometimes they connect with a feeling. Sometimes they connect with something I'm just not getting right, right? Okay, here's the word. Oh my goodness. What a great way, because I just did my gratefuls uh, just before I dozed off at the desk. But I was saying, I'm so grateful for having my good health, right? That lots of people out there are doing what I'm doing now, but they're doing it through those, again, handicaps, emotional, physical, right? Mental, and they're showing up anyway. And, I'm not saying I have any of those resolved, but I am sure in a better state than where I started, right? Where I started, I believe, was not the beginning, but it certainly wasn't the end either, because in this day and age, I woke up to a few ideas, and in those few ideas, right, I know we still have a long ways to go. You guys, gratefulness. Gratefulness is the expression of appreciation in the contribution, right? To matter if you contribute to yourself, you contribute to somebody else, or somebody else has contributed to you, right? Just in the gratefulness of the roof over my head, the groceries in the, right? My mother used to say all the time, eat your dinner, eat your vegetables, right? There are people in Africa that don't even have a meal. That was a very 1960s, 1970s thing where we were meant to, or we were, we had to, not meant to, we had to eat everything out of our plates and be grateful for that, right? But those were lessons of a day that possibly didn't have all the answers because those answers never came across, our paths. And it is a good thing to always keep in mind that any meal in front of us is a gift because there are people out there who would do anything just to have one meal every few days. And, as we get better with ourselves, we're managed to be better stewards of the ones in front of us. And not just the ones in front of us, the ones that are thousands of kilometers, thousands of miles away, right? That in a day and age where they're this close, right? We can be that evidence for others that it can be done. Okay, you guys. So grateful, Eugene, that you showed up with me tonight. I'm so grateful for my good health. I'm so grateful that I woke up when I did. Otherwise, I would be doing my live show very late and probably with a sore neck because I was all kinked over like that. I didn't think I was tired, but right. If I need to take a nap, I guess I need to take a nap. And it was just a doze for a moment. And as my head plucked down, it plucked up just as fast. Looked at the clock and went, oh my goodness, time to do my live. And no matter what, I show up. And that's one thing you can trust with me. I don't always get it right, but I am a steward of myself. And I do the very best for myself that I can, knowing that I'm creating the best human being that I possibly can. Everybody, have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow.